this video we'll be talking about worms. Worms, the board game, is based on the video game called Worms. This was a game that is actually still made today and is developed by a company called Team 17. They used to be based in the UK, although I don't know if they still are. They started off in the 90s and were really popular in the 90s and early 2000s. They started off with obviously Worms 1, and the aesthetics of the game case and the like sort of took on like a Rambo-esque aesthetic, which why not? But Worms 2 was more of a Saturday morning cartoon sort of flavour, and honestly they've kind of kept that aesthetic, just changing it throughout the years, making it more 3D, making it more 2D, just changing a bit of the colour pigment and so on and so forth. They've done a 3D one, although that one apparently controlling them's a bit hit and miss. They've also done a pinball game, strangely enough, which wasn't that bad. I did actually have it. There was only 2 tables for it. Still lots of fun. There was a lot of redos of the old games. You could buy the old games many times, and not long ago, at the time of this recording, they've actually done a remaster of Worms 2. Why they've not done a remaster of the complete version of Worms 2, Worms World Party, I don't know. But there you are. I would recommend it. It is basic in its entirety, but sometimes simplicity works. All this is based on the basic version, which is a 4-player game. If you want to get the really expensive one, which I think is 135 quid, I think it's somewhere around that, you can do 6 players, and really that, and there's more weapons, there's more tiles, there's more stuff, and there's more models, which it's just to make your teams look more unique. But otherwise, I mean, honestly, you could get 2 lots of these and it'd probably do a similar sort of thing, to be honest. Although, if you do that, some of the bits you might have to paint up, which you wouldn't need to normally. But anyway, so we'll just open the box. In it you'll find the rules, which is something Mantic's been doing. It's kind of like a weird A5 size. It does have a quick reference on the back, which is nice. Then you'll find 4 tiles. There are only 4, which is enough, and they're double-sided, so you get pink on this side and sort of like rockiness on this side, and they just go together. Well, that sort of thing. Yeah. Also inside you'll get a bag with these in, which contain the references for the different items: the oil drums, the crates, the mines and fire. And you also have 4 player aids, all different colours, 1 green, 1 yellow, 1 blue and 1 red. I'll show you why later. You also get a load of these water tiles, some of which have stuff on them, such as this dragon thing, and also this one, which is used for which way the wind is pointing. I'll explain how that works. They're also double-sided, so they're pink on this side because there's super sheep flying around. Unfortunately, in this version of the game, there is no super sheep weapon. So what else do we have? We also have a load of these, which, like everything, these, those, and these come on a punch out boards, which unfortunately you'll have to find your own bag for. But I mean, if you put all the items in one thing, you can mix all of these up, so you don't need a baggie. These do contain the counter for fire and mines, so this is taking damage from mines or fire. This is you don't take damage from fire, and a mine is a dud. This counter, which is double-sided, to show you which way the wind is pointing, so I'll just put this on here, and then you just put that on there, and then when the wind changes you just move it around to where the wind is pointing. Simple as that. On one side it's got crosshairs, and another side it's got a weird crosshairs with an arrow on it. I'll explain that later. This is more for targeting things and for airstrikes. Again, I'll explain them later. You also get a lot of fire tokens. These are for flamethrowers and if you explode oil barrels. You also get different crate types, such as these, which are double-sided, and these, which are double-sided, and these, which are double-sided. I don't know why they felt the need to do different coloured ones or different shaped ones, but they did. You also get, and these do come in a little baggie, which is weird, 5. They're essentially D12s, but they've only got numbers up to 6 on. They've also got this icon, which is basically you've hit your target, and this icon is blows into the wind. These are more rolled for if you're trying to hit something, or if it might scatter into the wind, or if your worm might go into the wind if you scatter into it. I'll explain that later as well. We also get 6 of these, which I have painted up, which are mines, to anyone who knows what worms are. These do come in a grey to start with. If I just show you the underside, they come like that colour. But I've painted them up as near as I can and put a varnish on. I would recommend, if you paint these, put varnish on all of them, because you will be handling them a lot. So you also get 6 crates, which to anyone who knows is where you get items from. Weapons and the like. You also get 6 oil drums, which I didn't recognise in there, really, because I never saw them or used them all that much. Oh, a bit of paint come off there, is it? Oh no, just me. Yeah. Focus camera. Yeah. So you get 6 of them. They explode and wreak havoc everywhere. You also get a load of cards. These ones with the black backs are your starting weapons, and you get, everyone gets an Uzi, a bazooka, a girder and a ninja rope each, and then once everyone's got one of them you shuffle these and then you give each player a random one. For example, mines, shotguns, baseball bats, handguns. Is there any jetpacks? Is there anything else? Grenade? No, I think that's it. You also get the most, which are the white backed cards. These are for the weapons that come out of crates, and there's 2 variants. There's the normal weapons, which have red across the top, and the super weapons, which have yellow. Shuffle these and then you just place them down, and then when a worm is in the same place as a crate or moves into a crate, they pick a card up. Next we have the ones with the green backing on. These are supply drops. You shuffle these, then you draw 2 per player and then 2 extra. So for example, in a 2-player game you should have 6. These kind of act as turn markers, because at the end of each turn you draw one of these and then you do what it says. For example, this one is place a supply crate into the emptiest hex, then place an ore drum in the same hex, then remove 3 fires from the map and then change wind speed. So you do all that, but you've only got 6 of them. That doesn't mean the game is over, because underneath all of that you get these, which are essentially Armageddon cards. You shuffle these and then you put one of these face down, and then you put the supply crate cards that you've drawn on top. And once you've got to this card, this is the card that activates each turn that goes over. So for example, this one is every worm has 1 health, because technically each worm has 2. Then you put a crate in the emptiest hex, then you change wind speed. Very simple. Some of them are a bit more extravagant, such as this one, blast the emptiest hex, place a supply crate in the emptiest hex, change wind speed. So if no crate hexes are empty, you're going to be starting blasting areas with worms and other such hazards in them. You also get the most important thing, the worms. Now, these little hexes on them are separate. You stick them on, well, you don't stick them on, you just put them on when you're playing the game. But I've stuck them on and I've painted the worms. Honestly, if you're not bothered about getting the big version and whatnot, you'll be fine doing this. The worms themselves come in grey like the items before you paint them. So you get 4 green discs, 4 blue discs, 4 red discs and 4 yellow discs, and you just put them to the bases and they stick on by friction. Some of them are a bit loose, but that's fine, that's fine. So you get 4 with oozes. What's nice about these, if the camera will focus, is you see where the eyes are, they are actually moulded in. So if you undercoat them white, you can see where the pupils are, which is really nice actually. These worms paint up really well actually, really well. I think I've gone a bit overboard with the wash I've put on top. I probably didn't need to do that, but I think it works. I think it works. It gives it its own flavour, I suppose. This one's got an Uzi and there's 4 of them. You're going to die. And I'm going to enjoy it. Yes. 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 You also get 4 bazooka worms. This one just looks like he's really outraged and a bit cross-eyed, like, I am going to kill you! Ah! Sort of like that sort of thing. You also get 4 of these ones with grenades, looking angry as well. If the camera will focus somewhat, thank you. And then you also get one of the creepiest looking character faces I've ever seen. You get 4 of these. He knows what he's done. Yeah, don't allow him near people. Yeah, that face. That face has seen some things. You don't want to ask him what he's seen, or he'll proudly tell you. But how do you play the game? Well, first off, you have to set up the game, and setup is very important. In fact, of all the board games I've got, setup is probably the most important of this game out of any, to be honest. What you do, you take this, the wind marker, and have it on either side. Just have it on blue for this video, and you just put it in the centre of where you're playing. So just spin this around a little bit. Then each player, doesn't matter who chooses first, it literally doesn't. I'll explain why. Well, you'll see. So each player takes a map piece and the first person puts it next to this. So, for example, puts it there, and then go round. So, let's say put that there. Let's say put that there, because you don't have to put them next to that. You could put them, as long as they're connected to other bits of land, you're fine. So, let's have this last piece going here. So, that's the map that we'll be using. And put these to one side, in the reach of at least one player, so they can get to them when they need to. Then what you need to do is create the deck in which you're playing with. Shuffle these. My shuffling skills are not amazing, as you can tell. Put one of them face down, like that. Then get these, give them a shuffle. Draw 2 per player, as said earlier. So let's go for 3 players this time. So that will be 6, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 2 more because you draw 2 more. And then you put them on top of that. Easy enough. Then what you do is you give these a shuffle and just put them essentially, just give these a shuffle, essentially put them next to these. It doesn't really matter as long as at least one player can reach them, like so. Then what you do is you give each player the 4 starting cards. So you know the starting ones are because they've got the symbol on them and they're black backed. So an Uzi, a bazooka, a girder and a ninja rope. You give each player them. So and then you give each player a random one. So I'll just get 4 of each out. So there we go. And then each player gets a random one. Nah. And then you get rid of the rest of them because you will not need them. So for example, this player here gets another bazooka. This player here gets a mine. This player here gets another girder. So then what you need to do is get the worms and stuff out for each player, because each player receives a crate, a mine and an oil drum. You will be using all of them, but this is just for setup purposes. Then each player chooses colours of worms. So let's say for this one we'll be using red, yellow and green. Then each player puts things around the map. Now when I say a thing, pretty much everything counts as a thing. Fire counts as things, craters count as things, oil drums count as things, mines count as things, supply crates count as things, and worms count as things. You can only have three of a thing in a hex, so if there's 2 crates in a fire, a worm can't go in there. Or rather, it could, and the fire would go out and the worm might get burnt. But, so, starting with the first player who put the first map tile down. So I'm going to put a green worm here. Then the red player is going to put a red worm there. The yellow player is going to actually put an oil drum here. And then you go round like so. So this will be the final setup. So the map looks like this. So every available worm has been put down. And every other item has been put down, so it looks very populated. Then what happens is you take these that are equal to the place. So there is a green one, there is a yellow one, and there is a red one, because they are the colours that are being used. You then turn them face down and give them a shuffle. You then give one to each player. This will denote what colour they're playing, because just because you've placed a colour down don't mean you're playing it. So for example, this player will be playing red, this player will be playing yellow, this player will be playing green. So yellow and green have swapped places, you see. Red has not. Once everything has been placed, you need to figure out which way the wind is blowing. You do that by rolling one of these, which in this case, if you get that or that, you roll until you get a number. 2. So the wind will be going on there. So for the first turn, for the first player, the wind will be going that way. So these handy reference things basically tells you what you need to do going down in that order. So firstly, we activate a worm, open supply crate. That means if a supply crate is in the same hex as a worm, then they open it. So because yellow is going first, the yellow player is going to activate that worm. So what we do next is heal worm. If damaged, stand up. So what that means is if a worm is damaged, which would be on its side from being blasted or being hit, you just stand up and then it's healed. You do have to activate the worm that's been damaged if you want to heal it. Next, it says you inch/jump resolve mines, crates, fire, etc. So inching is you move from one X to another, Jump is you can move up to 2 hexes, but you will be subject, potentially, should I say, subject to the wind, so you roll that. So, I'll just show you as an example. This worm wants to go into that square, so it can just move into there. That's called an inch. And because there's a crate in there, we resolve it by taking it off and drawing one of these. Should the worm instead want to go into that hex, because the worm started there, it moves into there is an inch, and then you resolve the mine, which means you'll be rolling, well, flipping this. It's a dud, so the worm is fine. If it was on this side, the mine would go off, blasting everything in the hex. So that would mean everything in there gets damaged and everything goes flying that is still alive, which means you roll that again and see where they land. So if it's crosshairs, they stay where they are. Anything else, you move it in that area. Like I've said before, if you get that, you move it where the wind is currently. So in this case, if you got a 2 or a wind, they go into 2, which would be there. And because it's water and worms can't survive in water, they drown and die. Anything that is not a land hex, like these or anything that's got this sort of detail on it, it counts as water, and so worms drown. Do the inch/jump twice, so you can effectively make 2 moves a turn. Then once you've done that, you play a card. So for this, I'll do this worm that I was going to do, but instead what I'm going to do is move 1 to there. All drums don't do anything if you move into them or move out of them. It's just if you damage them. So move inch 1 to there, and then I'm going to inch again to there. And because there's a crate, I get to resolve it, so take it off and get an item. And in this case, gets dynamite. Very handy. So then play a card. So the yellow player, what have they got? Well, we have dynamite, an Uzi, a mine, a bazooka, a girder, and a ninja rope. But how do these cards work? So this symbol means you do what it says in the box. This symbol means you get to move the worm 1. And if it's got 2 arrows, you move it up to 2. And this symbol means you play another card. There's different things that do, well, different things. Target is, well, the target, who you're targeting. Direct hex within 2, if you're using the Uzi. So direct has to be in a straight line. So going from this worm, it has to be in a straight line, like from the hexes. You couldn't, for example, go from that hex to that hex because it's not a straight line. You could go from that hex to, I'll just zoom the camera down, that hex because it is in a straight line. Or you could go from that hex to that hex because it's a straight line. If it says target own hex, like the mine does, then has to be the hex you're in. If it says accuracy and then a number, you roll that many dice. However, there is a catch to that. Accuracy 4 would mean you're targeting the adjacent hex. However, if you're targeting one away from the adjacent hex, you roll 1 less dice. So if I was targeting with the yellow worm that hex, I'd be rolling 3 dice rather than 4. If I was targeting, say, that hex, because it's so far away, I'd be rolling 2 less dice. So I'd be only rolling 2 dice. If I wanted to go into that hex, I'd only be rolling 1 dice. Risky, but why not? So I'm going to use the bazooka and I'm going to target this hex. So what you do is you put the target in there. Unless it actually targets a worm specifically, you just target in the area. So for example, the Uzi actually damages a thing, so you target a thing, be it a worm, a mine or whatever. If it blasts like the bazooka does, you explode everything. So because it's 1 away, if I just get the camera in the right area, I roll 3 dice. Like I said, if it was there, I'd roll 4, but because I've targeted there, I'll roll 3. So let's see what we get. In this case, I got wind, a 1 and a 6. So that's my choices. So if I go into the wind, it'd go there. If I'd got a 6, well, because of the 6, I get to choose there. With a 1, I get to go there. Because if you look at the wind, you sort of like put it in the same sort of thing as where the target hex is. So 1 is that way, 6 is that way, and the wind is that way. I don't want to choose the wind because the wind goes off into the water, so does nothing. A 1 would get mine, which is not a good idea. But a 6 would get that one, so that is a good idea. So it will actually hit there. Because it's a blast, what happens there is a crater goes down, like so. Everything in there gets damaged, and then you roll the dice to see where the worm scatters. In this case I rolled a 3. I'll just show you on camera here. So a 3 is down here, so it actually scatter into this hex. So the yellow player has actually damaged a worm, just not the target one. So once I've done the effect, I get to move 1. So the yellow worm will actually move 1 into there, just so it can follow up next in. You then discard the card you used, and then you end the turn by drawing one of these. These don't go into your hand, these are just what happens at the end of this turn. So for example, this one is place a supply crate in the emptiest hex, which there are 3 choices. There is that hex there, there is that hex there, and there is that hex there. So I'm going to put a supply crate into, if I just raise the camera up, that hex there, and then I'm going to put a mine, because it got me in the same hex, in there. And then I'm going to see if the wind changes. It does not. For changing wind direction, if you get the wind or the crosshairs, it does not change. So for the next player, it's going that way. If a worm is in a hex with a mine, then it doesn't matter. It's only if a worm moves into a hex with a mine. So this worm will move into this hex, and then they need to flip this. So in this case, the worm's fine. But if they got this, like I've said before, you blast everything in there, remove the mine, so everything gets damaged. Because it's blast, a crater gets placed in, and then the player who moved in there rolls for each worm and sees where they scatter. So should a worm go over here or over here-ish, then they drown and die. What about if there's fire in a hex with a worm? Same thing. If the fire's already in there, no problem. But if you move in there, you get rid of the fire and then you flip that. If you go that way up, then the worm is damaged and then their turn is automatically over. You then move on to the supply drop stage. What about if an oil drum gets damaged? Well, you then roll 5 dice, all 5 of these, and then you see where the fire scatters. Once you've rolled, you get rid of any duplicates. So in this case, I got these. I'll just put them into view. I got 2 6s and 2 directs, so we get rid of those 2. So we got a 6, which is there, so nothing. We also got a 3, which is there, so nothing. So we got there, which is direct. So put a fire in there, and everything gets damaged in there. But what if we got a 2, which is that one? So the worm would get damaged, and a fire would get placed in there. Likewise in there, everything would get damaged. So that gets damaged, the mine gets damaged. So not only is there a fire, there's also a crater in there. So as you can see, if there's 2 ore drums next to each other, chaos can very easily ensue very quickly, as more ore drums go off and more fire spread, more things take damage and more things die. If you get a card that says knockback scatter, then you roll a dice as normal, but the crosshairs means you choose where the target goes flying. Sometimes you might want to scatter a mine or an ore drum somewhere else, and it doesn't do any damage. However, because it's the baseball bat, it scatters 2, so you could use that to your advantage. Should a worm take damage when it's already damaged like that, they are dead, so then they get removed. Should a hex have 3 craters on it, you remove all the hexes, you replace it with a water hex. That means if a worm goes on it, or indeed anything goes on it, they drown and die. Should a player get defeated, i.e. have no worms, in this case the red player, because they have no worms left, every other player gets 1 more turn, even if that player eliminated the red player. They still get 1 more turn. After that, the player with the most worms remaining wins. If they both have the same amount of worms remaining at the end, then it's a draw. There are some instances where you will get a draw, but chances are there will be a winner by the end of it. Like I said, there's also these handy reference cards to tell you what things do, including water, which is nice. You don't usually see things like this, to this amount of detail, which I do applaud. Worms itself is a pretty decent game. It was on Kickstarter, but I couldn't see the point of it when I first saw it. I just thought, how's that going to work? I don't know if a lot of people thought so, but it got made, so clearly a lot of people thought it'd be a good idea. And I'm glad I was wrong, because it's a pretty decent game. It's not one that's going to set the world on fire, pun sort of intended, but it's one that you're just going to set up, you're just going to play a game of, and that's it. It's not really one that's made for campaign things, but really, I think a lot of people have forgotten this. We don't need a big campaign in things. We don't need like a tournament play thing. Sometimes you just need a game that set down and then just do. And Worms does that. I do wish they'd release a 5 to 6 player expansion with just extra stuff in it. It's not just locked to the big box. That is really the only downside. 4 players is fine, but I just wish it'd have that expansion just for more. Just for that little bit of extra. It does retail for £50, which I think it's right on the money for that. You might not think you're getting much with not many map tiles and the like, but you do get a fair bit for what you're paying for. And honestly, if you like painting stuff, they are easy to paint. Honestly, for young people, kids and whatnot, and for older players, this is pretty well done stuff. The rulebook's not bad, although in some places they do add stuff where it could be somewhere else, but generally it's not too bad, and the reference on the back does help a lot. Honestly, once you've read through it a bit, just using the references is fine. You won't need the rulebook at all. And like Mantic have been doing for a fair bit now, everything fits into a plastic slot thing, So all the worms fit somewhere, all the items fit somewhere. The only things that kind of don't are the hexes. You just put them on top of the cover thing, which, alright, there's only 4 in the rulebook, so it's not really that big of an issue, to be honest. But yeah, if you just want a nice board game where you've got a lot of chaos and a bit of fun, can't go wrong with this, can you? So, thank you for watching. Goodbye for now.